Okay, so we will call the 9 o'clock Commissioners' Work Session to order. Today we are going to be receiving information from DLZ, there's Ed, from the facility assessment that they had been contracted to do. This is a work session only, so we will not be making any decisions or taking any votes. It's just to go through the presentation and receive the report. With that, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Okay, great.
As I'm not on the microphone, so we're live streaming it on our YouTube channel, so that way they'll be able to hear you.
Sure. All right. Great. Thank you. My name is Scott Carnegie, Architect Project Manager with DLZ.
Robert Willie, DLZ Electrical Engineer.
So as Bobby mentioned, we're here to present the feasibility study and life cycle cost analysis for Henry County. That's it. So DLZ, we're a full-service architectural engineering firm. We have all services in-house: mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structural, site, civil, architecture. We're located in downtown Indianapolis. We do a lot of facility assessments just like this for various counties. In fact, when I leave here, I'm going to Ripley County because we're doing a very similar facility assessment for them. What you have, these big stacks, this is the full report, the same as what was handed to you all, I believe, a few weeks ago. The only thing I did was I changed the date. I'm trying to cover it with today's date. And that stack over there is more of a condensed version of this full report. For the sake of time, I took some slides out of here, but kept kind of what I thought we should address during this presentation. The facility assessment, we reviewed 3 facilities. We reviewed the courthouse, the Justice Center, and the office building. And the purpose of the facility assessment and life cycle cost analysis was to assess the existing conditions and to note suggested improvements, maintenance and repairs needed to generally meet current code and prevent possible further deterioration of components in need of repair. So it was based on visual observation. So we didn't climb around on ladders, pop ceiling tiles, those types of things. We didn't tear anything up to look at certain components as part of our facility assessment. One thing that's very important to understand. Okay, thank you. One thing that's very important to understand, and we're going to spend just a moment here on this slide, because this kind of sets the table for what we're going to review. And that is how we categorize the observations that we see. So we put those into 4 different categories: priority 1, 2, 3, and 4. And priority 1, those are items that are currently critical. Conditions in this priority require immediate action to address life safety hazards. So that's the most critical priority. And then we have priority 2. Those are potentially critical conditions. If not corrected expeditiously, may become critical in the future. Priority 3, those are necessary, not yet critical. And priority 4, those are recommendations. So just understand that, and we'll spend a little more time on that here in just a moment. One of the other components of this report is the actual life cycle cost analysis. And this chart that you see here, you'll see a lot of red, yellow, and green. Think of it like a stoplight. Green means go, everything is in pretty good shape. Yellow means we're in kind of a 5-year window where the average life expectancy of a particular building component is anticipated to exceed its life expectancy. And red means that it has exceeded its life expectancy. So this is a visual representation of what is in the report as far as items needing repair or replacement. Before I go any further, one thing I would like to say, and I would say this whether or not he was sitting in the room or not, and that is a big thank you to your maintenance staff. They spent, I know, 2 full days with me walking around. We walked every square inch of all 3 buildings, and I believe about a day and a half with our engineers. So that was a big time commitment, and we appreciate their involvement. When we further into the presentation, you'll see where we're going to present probable costs. Those are based on 2023 construction, spring of 2023, anticipated costs if you were to proceed with any of these proposed recommendations. And again, we reviewed 3 buildings. The Henry County Courthouse was built between 1865 and 1869. It's on the National Register of Historic Places. The Henry County Justice Center was built in 2001, obviously your newest facility of the 3. And then the Henry County Office Building was built in 1892, and it's in a registered historic district. And I point that out because any time a building is actually on the National Registry or in a historic district, there are certain regulations that Bobby's shaking her head, so I'm sure you all are fully aware of. So the first building that we're going to talk about is the courthouse. And in the full report, you will see many more slides just like that with accompanying photographs. But we took several of those out, but we're going to talk about those in the summary pages coming up here. But we just wanted to include just a representation so you can see the format. We reviewed the site, and you can see there's an accompanying photograph and an accompanying bullet point there with what we saw. And those are going to be summarized in the report here in just a moment. Okay.
Yeah, because one of the pictures you have here, I have an insurance claim
Okay.
To repair part of the retaining wall and hand railing and stuff because there was an accident that caused part of that.
Okay.
So that, and I've replaced 2 more furnaces and central air units when you get to those parts that you actually can take off of your
Okay.
list.
Good. Yeah, that's good information.
Too much microphone.
We also reviewed the exterior envelope of the building, and again, this is just a representation of some of the elements that we looked at, and you can see the accompanying comment. And again, in the full report, there's several more sheets with photographs and information. We also reviewed the interior components. And again, similar format, many more pages within the full report. The HVAC, we did the same thing. You can see accompanying photographs with bullet point information. And we did it for plumbing, fire protection, and electrical.
So real quick, Steve, the one on, when we go back to HVAC, these condensing units are what we just replaced. The HAU 1 and 3 associated condensing units.
Yes, as a matter of fact, one of them they have a picture of is one we just replaced.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, and it says there was recently replaced.
okay,
Yeah, correct.
okay.
So the plumbing, fire protection, and electrical, we also included, we're going to talk about these in greater detail. I just wanted to show
Oh,
you
sure.
an example of the format of the report and how we assembled the report. So this is an actual life cycle cost analysis applicable to the courthouse. The previous one that we showed was just an example, just so I could explain how it was put together. And you can see it, I'm going to turn here so you can see the bigger format here. But this is the architecture component. And you can see the year that it was built there in the green. Now, we know that there have been a lot of improvements, a lot of changes in the courthouse over the 100-some-odd years that's been existing. So we started the next column over in 2022, and that's where the X's are. So you can see over on the left-hand column, those are the typical architectural components that we reviewed, and we put the average life expectancy there in the third column from the right. And then the years in service, if we know when it, how many years it's been in service, we documented that in that column. And then the column to the far right is how many years it has as far as its life expectancy. And again, the red, yellow, and the green, if it's green, it's good. Yellow means we're kind of within a 5-year window of when you ought to think about budgeting some money to address those items. And red means that it's beyond its anticipated life expectancy. So this is for the courthouse architecture. We did the same thing for the HVAC and plumbing. And again, following the same format. The left-hand column are the primary building components. The green, the next column over, we know is the year that it was constructed. And then the 3 columns over on the right, the anticipated life expectancy, years in service, and how many years as far as the anticipated life expectancy. Did the same thing for the electrical components.
Yeah, the only difference is this one's a little bit more drawn out due to the fact that we actually know some installation dates, so it just added a little bit more to it.
Okay.
Now this is where we wanted to spend a little more time, because this is where we summarize all of the previous photographs and pages in the previous full report that has all of the photographs and the bullet points. They're all summarized in these slides that are coming up. And if you recall, priority 1, that's the most critical. So based on our experience, we went through and we looked at every item that we visually observed during our facility assessment, and we categorized those. So here in priority 1, here for the courthouse, we have replaced failed sidewalk and steps, replace the failed non-code compliant, non-ADA compliant site handrails, guardrails, provide handrails, guardrails where they don't exist. There's some area wells in particular around the outside that don't have guardrails. So those are primarily what we're talking about, and the handrails there are not compliant. We know that there's some stormwater issues, drains and pipes at the lower level, the exterior stoops. We would suggest that those actually be scoped to see where they're failed. We know that they're likely failed in some locations, and that's what's leading to some of the stormwater getting into the basement. But again, we couldn't visually observe where the pipe may be collapsed or obstructed, so we would suggest that those be scoped. Repair building foundation walls, stair retaining walls, and again, if you look back in the full report and the photographs, you will see exactly what we're talking about there. There's a lot of masonry issues for the courthouse that need to be addressed. I always say when I do these types of presentations, short of a fire, a hurricane, or tornado, water is building's worst enemy. If you don't stop water infiltration, it's just a matter of time before you're going to lose the facility. And again, you'll see repair and replace exterior stone trim, and again, that's all part of the masonry restoration, the brick and tuck pointing, several locations. Repair and replace exterior wood, metal trim, the decorative corbels and soffits, fascia, etc. Just some painting and some repairs that need to occur. Replace exterior building sealants throughout, and again, that's not uncommon. We see that very frequently when we do these types of facility assessments. Again, that's all in an effort to keep water infiltration out of the building. Replace the clock tower downspouts and slate ridge cap, and you will see that I took a photograph from one of the adjoining buildings. You can see where that's an issue in the photograph. Replace leaking gutters and downspouts. There's various locations where some of the gutters and downspouts need repair and replacement. Replace exterior windows complete. And when we get over to the office building, you will see that that is especially true. And I'm sure you're all fully aware of that. Replace the lower level exterior doors, hardware, frames, and transoms. There's some wood doors, frames that are starting to rot. So we would suggest that those be replaced. Address stormwater entering the lower level. Further investigation is required, and I spoke about that as far as scoping some of those drains. And again, spoke just briefly also, correct non-code compliant, non-ADA compliant stair handrails. And again, in a historic facility like this, it's not uncommon that handrails, because they changed the code, especially the ADA when it was enacted in the 1980s. So it's not uncommon to see handrails that aren't compliant. Correct the rotunda stair opening. So right outside this area, right out here, the rotunda, I call it the rotunda. The stair opening, non-code compliant, non-ADA compliant handrails and guardrails. And again, guardrails are supposed to be 42 inches tall. prevent somebody from falling over. So that's something that we would recommend be addressed as well.
Yeah, and we'd also want to upgrade the fire alarm smoke detection system. It's currently in the corridors only. So I think you need to get it in a little bit more spaces around here, especially when they're occupied. And some that are not occupied, like the attic area. And then also need to add fire alarm manual pull stations at all exterior egress doors.
So this completes priority 1, and again, that's what we, based on our professional opinion, those are the items that we would recommend that you really focus on. Moving from priority 1, we have priority 2s. Replace pavers at the site picnic area. They're just kind of uneven there, kind of a tripping hazard. Replace exterior barrel vault, soffit, cement, plaster where failing, and again, that's the lower level when you walk in. Repair, replace interior marble tile floor to exterior doors. I'm sure you're all pretty familiar. If you roll back the walk-off mats, you'll see where those are deteriorated. Provide ADA compliant signage throughout, and that was common between all 3 buildings that we reviewed. Address public and staff toilet room ADA issues throughout, and again, that was fairly common except in the newer facility. Door hardware, you'll see that a lot of your buildings, your 2 oldest buildings, this building and the office building, it's not uncommon, again, just because of the era of the facility, to have knob-style doorknobs, non-ADA compliant. They need to be lever type.
And those are talking to the office entrance doors, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Public and staff toilet room, ADA issues is also a part of our priority 2s. Non-ADA compliant accessible routes, the commissioner's office, commissioner's council chambers, platform, etc. There's various ADA egress issues throughout the facility. And again, not uncommon for a building of this era. ADA compliant seating at the Commissioner's Council chambers. And you can see in here that it's not non-ADA compliant in this room that we're actually sitting in. As far as wheelchair access, I'm sure you all make accommodations. ADA says you can't discriminate, so you can't just put them in the back, you can't just put them in the front. You have to provide, equal.
But from a storage standpoint, we're not going to destroy this.
And that is true, and I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah.
I'm going to repeat what Steve said.
Some of these things I'm having issue with that we're going to.
From a historic.
From a historic standpoint, we're going to change the historic appearance or whatever of the building, and that's what we're trying to not do. We're trying to put it back as historic accurately as we can.
Yes.
And some of these changes we'll have when you're reading through, I'm thinking, some of these things are going to kind of destroy the building from a historic standpoint, and that's what we're trying not to do.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point. Buildings that are on the National Registry, there are some provisions that permit you to not fully comply because of all of the historic integrity of the building. Now, for example, in some of the non-ADA compliant restrooms, it could be something as simple as adding an 18-inch vertical grab bar, something like that. So it's one of those things you have to evaluate on a case-by-case basis, but there are certainly some aspects that you can go and you can say, because of its historical impact, we're not going to implement X.
Right.
Yeah, and that's absolutely correct.
Yeah, a lot of the HVAC items listed on here are basically just because it's not the equipment is bad, it's just that they're past its life expectancy. So he's got on here replace the boilers and associated pumps, the boiler pumps themselves, the boilers themselves, the existing water heater, the water softener, and then I believe you mentioned the AHU 1 and 3 you've already replaced, so those are coming off the list. And then I believe the lavatory faucet, the associated piping there, I believe there was some leaking going on in there, so just wanted to take a look at that and replace that. As far as the exit signs, that's more of an electrical item, and it's a code issue because you currently have 2 different colors of exit signs. So I just wanted to get those all in the same color. And then the last one is just it's a simple fix, and in fact, the maintenance guy can do it in 5 minutes and just get a step ladder and close the wireway that's above the open panel down there in the basement.
So then moving on to priority 3, and again, we're kind of dropping down in the priority levels. So for the courthouse, we would suggest repair of the site retaining walls, which you just spoke to when we started this meeting. Remove mulch and debris from the lower level window wells, really very minor. Repair failed interior wall plaster where failed. There's just a few locations, and again, it's very likely because of water infiltration where some plaster needs repaired. And then replace stained and worn carpet, which occurs in several locations.
This room being one of them.
Some of the HVAC items on here, replace the unit heater in a mechanical room. It's still working, still fine. It's got life left, but it's nearing the end of that. Replace the piping subject to rusting. It's already starting to rust, so you know it's going to deteriorate even further if you don't replace it. Replace the floor drain serving the commissioner's office area. Replace the damaged condensate drain piping. Provide a dedicated floor drain to serve the water service entrance assembly. I would assume it probably gets wet down there. Replace the exhaust fans in the restrooms, and then replace the steam condensate pump. And as on the electrical side, I'd say replace all the fluorescent lighting in the building with LED lights. And then I'd also like to replace the main distribution panel breaker before it fails. The panel's still fine, and you can still get parts for it, but the main breaker you cannot, per the manufacturer. They said it's basically, yeah, everything's fine, but the main breaker, they can't replace that just by the way it's tied into the panel.
And priority 4, again, dropping down in the priority level, these are just recommendations. Establish turf at the lawn areas around the outside of the building. Address site grading. There's a few low spots around the site in the building. Again, all of this is managing stormwater. Replace acoustical panel ceiling systems throughout. You can kind of look up here and see some panels that probably ought to be replaced. Repair the lower level wall furring finish, and again, that's assuming that we also address the stormwater issue. There's no need to repair and replace if we're not going to address the stormwater issue. Provide a new building management system and interface equipment controls. You want to talk about these, Robert?
Yeah, and I think that's more of a wish list to help the maintenance be able to control the building a little bit easier. To provide the drinking fountains and electric water coolers. I think I read in the note that some of them were failing or not connected or maybe not just turned off right now because of COVID, I would guess. The other ones provide a fire sprinkler system throughout the building. Again, if you provide that, you don't need to do smoke detectors. It's one or the other type of thing. The other one's cap off conduits exposed conduits penetrating the women's restroom and patch the walls needed down there. There's some pipes sticking out down there. And then part of the lighting controls, add lighting controls when you add a new lighting. It's kind of, in a building of this age, it's not required, but it's recommended to give you additional savings, energy savings.
So, the slide that everyone's interested in. The
I will say
anticipated costs.
that's where I went to first before I read anything else.
So the anticipated costs to address each of the items and each of the priorities. You can see priority 1, 2.6 to 2.9. Priority 2, 505 to 558,000. Priority 3 was 449, basically 450,000 to 528,000. Priority 4, 862 to 951,000. So then we add those up, and the range for all the items that we talked about for the courthouse is 4.493 million to 4.9, almost $5 million. So if you addressed everything that was in those priorities. So that's the courthouse. And then moving on then to the Justice Center. And again, we just included some representation of how the full report is assembled with the photographs and accompanying narrative for each item. You can see we did that for the exterior, the interior. We did that for the HVAC, the plumbing, fire protection, and electrical. And again, the full report has many more slides and accompanying photographs. then the life cycle cost analysis, and again, I'm going to turn over here because it's bigger and I can actually read it as opposed to small on my screen. But this is the architecture, and again, the format's the same primary building components in the far left-hand corner. You can see that we actually started this in 2001 because we know when that building was built, so that's why the chart is much longer. And you can see the red, yellow, and the green. Now, compared to the courthouse that we just reviewed, you can see there's a lot more green, a lot newer facility, so that's to be expected. Then you can see over in the far right-hand column the average life expectancy, the years in service, and then the total remaining years in service in the far right-hand column. And the red, yellow, green is the same. You can see that the 5-year mark, starting with 2023 technically, out 5 years, you can see this is a graphic representation of what we would suggest that you begin to focus on or budget some money to address. Items that are in red or soon to be yellow within that 5-year window. Did the same thing for the mechanical, plumbing, and fire protection. It's the same format, primary building components over on the far left, and everything else is the same. You can see that there's some items that just kind of recently turned red within that 5-year window. Again, building was constructed in 2021, so we're kind of to the stage where you're kind of starting your first round of some maintenance issues over there on that facility. Really, is there anything in particular?
No, it's all pretty much the same thing. Yeah, most of the stuff is newer. Most of the stuff is newer. Some of it's been replaced, so we're looking pretty good on everything. The only thing that was that I would point out is that your cameras are getting a little old over there for 20 years old. So.
And again, just as
We added the ones that were existing, and actually Jeff Lutz and I had a conversation yesterday. We're still able to get those cameras. Matter of fact, we just got, I think, one yesterday or day before, I can't remember, of the older. But I asked him at what point do we need to start converting them, and we can convert them without having to rerun. But right now, we're still able to get them.
Yeah, you can still get them for now, but eventually they're going to go away because they are the old analog.
Yeah, they are the old analog cameras. And they don't give as good a picture as the new ones that we put in.
Right, the newer ones are going to digital and the IP.
Yep. Yeah. But yeah, to answer your question, the existing ones are still the older ones, and the ones that we added in the different locations over there are the newer ones.
I was just noticing on your graphs, and we're talking about the newer building, but speaking for us, we throw more money into that building as far as maintenance and upkeep than we do any of the other two combined. So when you say, it's not as bad, and I'm thinking, I don't understand how it cannot be as bad, because, man, we put a ton of money into that building.
Priority ones, and Commissioner, speaking to your point, you will see that as we go through these priorities, there's far less priorities over there than there is
in
the courthouse and the office building. But again, priority one, currently critical, replace exterior buildings, site sealants throughout. Again, just the average life expectancy for building sealants is about 15, 20 years. So it's kind of to that point. Relocate the roof access hatch to meet minimum OSHA standards. So the roof hatch over there, I was kind of surprised and shocked. I don't remember if you were the one with me that day we were walking around. It's so close to the building edge that doesn't meet OSHA standards. It needs to be set back off the face.
So did those standards change from the time it was built, or it just
tell you
could? Okay.
I didn't research back in the 2001 building code.
Right.
Repair exterior fascia panel above the window at the north side. And again, if you look at the full report, you'll see the photograph of what I'm talking about. And again, I'm observing it from the ground, so I'm looking way up, but you can tell it's out a little bit, like it's just come apart. Correct the window leak at the judge's office and various other locations. There's a few areas, and again, I wouldn't have known this without the maintenance staff walking with us, pointing out, yes, that window right there leaks. So we documented those locations within our report. Provide vehicular traffic rated floor coating at the vehicle sally port. So right underneath of the vehicle sally port is an electrical or IT communication type room. And when vehicles pull in there, and it's probably predominantly happens when there's snow and the it melts and it sits there and just drips and drips and drips. Well, right underneath of that is a IT communication, a lot of equipment racks in there. And you can see where they've actually put in ceiling tiles that are kind of like drip pans with the drain. So we would suggest that we coat that floor with a heavy-duty floor coating. They do a lot in like parking garages and that type of thing, and we do a lot of those.
And will that keep that dripping from
Yeah.
happening?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It was a solution, I guess, however many years they did that. Yeah.
Yeah, the last one may be fixed already, but when I was over walking around, the staff was telling me they kept having maintenance trouble issues on the fire alarm control panel due to the phone lines being.
And I believe they've gotten that
Okay.
corrected.
Yeah, I figured you would because it's usually a nuisance. When it becomes a nuisance, and it becomes fixed.
Yeah, I believe.
So
I believe
that
they got
is
that
all
corrected.
for priority 1.
Okay.
So those are all the priority 1 items for the Justice Center. Priority 2, and again, we're dropping down in the priority level. Repair the exterior limestone, mortar degradation, particularly at the north entrance. If you go over there and you look where the main entrances are, I'm not sure what to call them, but those kind of big limestone plinth blocks with the big brown circular limestone down around the base. There's some tuck pointing and some repair that we would suggest be addressed. ADA signage, it's not ADA compliant. And again, that's common between all 3 buildings. Address public and staff toilet room ADA issues. And again, that's 18-inch vertical grab bar. And again, in 2001, that wasn't a requirement. It came later. Repair a toilet room floor grout. There's just a couple locations where the grout, there's a crack in the grout. We would just suggest that be corrected. Address a non-ADA accessible platform at the 3rd floor hearing room. It looks like it was somebody built the platform later. It's just technically not ADA compliant.
Yeah, and you've got on here, add some control points so that way the staff can monitor the gray water pumps and the sewage water pumps so that they know when there's an issue down there. And then also resize the ductless split serving the 911 dispatch server room. It was a little warm when we went in there, so. He's also got, due to the life expectancy, the equipment's coming down towards the end of life, so he's got on here replace the boilers, the chillers, the air handlers, the air handler pumps, the domestic water pumps, the gray water pumps, and then also the UPS. It is beyond its life expectancy. The batteries are maintained, but eventually the electronics are going to start failing. And then he's got provide a new water softener and a new exhaust fan to the outside for halogen sensor in the mechanical room.
So I'm just going to ask this question. So a couple months ago, Butch had to replace the generator down in dispatch. Remember, we had the temporary. Is this what you're talking about, the power supply? Is that what you're talking about? He had to.
If you go into the server room over there, there's a black box in there. It's a two cabinet box in there, and that's the UPS.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that, okay. Thank you.
Priority 3, and again, dropping down in priority level. There's a few exterior hollow metal doors and frames that are just beginning to show a little bit of sign of rust down on the bottom. Repair, replace broken exterior downspout boot, support bracket. And again, that's one location kind of on the back of the building. You put that on there. Replace the roof membrane. It's starting to reach its anticipated life expectancy for that roof. Replace when you're up there on the roof, it was probably popular back in the 1990s, a product called Thipon, which was a synthetic wood product, but that's the kind of the decorative baluster railing at the top. If you get up there and you look at it closely, and there's some very good photographs in the full report, you'll see where that's starting to delaminate and actually come apart. So we would suggest that that be replaced if and when you do a roof replacement. Secondly, that baluster up there, that synthetic, I don't know if it's 5-pond, but it's a synthetic, wood product. It actually creates a dam condition on the front side between that and the roof edge, the coping, where water gets in there, it can't flow back to the drains. So we would suggest that that be corrected if that's replaced. Repair, paint, plaster soffits, and again, your main entrances there, just a couple areas where the plaster's starting to fall off, so we suggest it's really very minor.
I thought we had another question there. Repair the sanitary pipe on serving the second floor fixtures up there, and then keeping with the theme of life expectancy, replace the exhaust fans, the unit heaters, the water heater, and fire pump.
Is that correct, Greg? We just replaced the fire pump.
Rebuild it, yeah, it's new supposedly, yeah, 'cause I just talked to them this week, we're supposed to test run it.
One item that we put on priority 4, and again, the maintenance staff educated us on this, but evidently during winter weather, that the main sidewalk there on the north side, that it is frequently icy because it doesn't receive daylight. So we have that as a priority 4, but if you were to consider replacing that sidewalk, incorporate a heated sidewalk in there. Now that's possibly also related to some of the limestone degradation around the main entrances. If you're out there throwing a lot of salts and chemicals to, melt ice, it's kind of hard on some of the masonry. In the lower level, there's a crack in the slab on grade. It's not posing any problems. We just put that on the list because we observed it, but we would suggest to monitor that. Replace worn stained carpet. Again, 2001, some of the interior finishes are beginning to show some age. Same with the countertops. Ceiling panels, there's some that are damaged, just stains here and there, that type of thing, so we just have that on the list to replace those. Replace sealants at the countertop and backside splash at various locations, and if you look at the full report, you'll see some photographs. It's really very minor. Replace scratch, damaged gypsum board walls, paint. There's a few locations just where it's scuffed up. Repair and replace the gypsum board finish, the intercom at the third floor hearing room. And again, if you look at the full report, you'll see a photograph, but on the wall right there, there's an intercom button right there, and the hole is actually oversized for the intercom. So if you wanted to patch and repair that. Provide steps at the top of the staff courtroom ramp at locations currently don't exist. So from the judge's chamber area, there's that hallway, and I believe that somebody at some point has later come in and they've added some steps, so they don't have to walk around and then walk all the way up the ramp. They've added some steps at the 4 locations, but not all 4 locations have those steps built in. So that's what that comment's in regards to. Clean paint the bottom side of the stair landing, provide sealant, paint door frame at the top of the stair. And again, in the full report, you'll see that in there. And again, that's relatively minor.
You need to replace the fluorescent light fixtures with LED, and again, going with that, replace the controls with it as well. More energy savings. And then the last comment is replace the analog cameras and intercom stations with new, and then basically integrate the system. You currently have an Exact Vision for the video system. SAS control runs that, and then you also have a Honeywell PLC for the door controls, and then the intercom that's all separate. So I would suggest that you combine them all so you can have them all in one station and monitor everything.
And the anticipated costs for spring 2023 bid period, if you so choose to address any of these items. Priority 1 is $143,000 to $159,000. Priority 2s were $795,000 to $874,000. Priority 3 was $595,000 to $654,000. Priority 4s, $903,000 to basically $1 million. And then you can see the total there of all of the priorities, 2.4 to 2.7 million.
Subject to change based on what you've already done.
Right. You're right.
Well, we haven't done $1 million worth.
And then
We have done some, upgraded some of the cameras, added additional cameras. You know, some of those things have been done.
And the Henry County office building, and again, we just included some representative pages there. And again, the full report has many more. You can just see some of the items that, we looked at. We looked at the architecture, the exterior. We looked at the interior. We looked at the HVAC, plumbing, fire protection, and electrical. And the associated life cycle cost analysis slide, same format as before. This one is much shorter because the building is so much older. We don't know when many of the components have been repaired and replaced over time. So we kind of struck a line and we said, okay, well, as of 2022, and that's where the chart actually begins. And you can see the red, yellow, and the green, and the columns on the far right-hand side are the same as all of the others. Same for the HVAC and plumbing.
Yeah, the electrical is just drawn out again because I need the date of some of the equipment.
Right. Oh, good, there's a lot more green on there.
Priority 1's for the office building. And again, I think I alluded to this when we were talking about the courthouse. But as far as the brick and the tuck pointing, there's several issues over there that need to be addressed, and it's all related to water infiltration. Repair, replace, paint exterior wood trim. Several locations just need paint. Replace the exterior building site sealants throughout, and again, not uncommon. Repair, replace exterior limestone trim units, various locations where limestone has failed. There's storefront framing, and miscellaneous trim. And again, there's some good photographs in the full report. Provide paint window and door lintels. And again, that's relatively minor, but just as a maintenance item. Replace the windows, and this is one of the big ones we talked about before when we were talking about the courthouse windows. We've essentially lost the majority of the windows over there. They're in very bad shape. So we strongly recommend a window replacement. Infill the former door window openings at the exterior wall with new extra grade plywood, sealant paint, or infill with brick. There's one location when you walk around the building and you turn the corner, there's just one area there. I don't know what the opening was originally, but it's been infilled with plywood, and it just needs replaced and painted. Address stormwater infiltration at the lower level, repair the foundation wall. Further investigations required, and again, we need to do some exploratory, see what the storm drain condition is on the outside of the building, especially there on the one corner. We're suspect that's likely the culprit of why there's stormwater entering the lower level. Correct downspout, ice dam condition, third floor stairwell, clean masonry and paint. And again, in the full report, you'll see that photograph, what we're talking about. Provide panic devices at door hardware. We're talking about crash bars at egress doors, both sets of doors. And you'll see in the full report a photograph, you need to have crash bars for emergency egress, door hardware on those doors. That's why that made priority 1, because we see that as a life safety issue. Priority 2, replace exterior insulated hollow metal door and wood frames. If you walk around the building, the lower level there, you'll see that those are in pretty bad shape, kind of starting to fall apart, and you'll see those photographs. Address public and staff toilet rooms, ADA issues throughout. Upgrade the elevator to be ADA compliant. It's currently not ADA compliant. Most of the time, that has to do with the controls and the signage. So if you go into the elevator, there's no braille, for the, even the floor indicators. When you walk out of elevator opening there on the jams, you'll see the level indicator. Those aren't ADA compliant as well. Address non-ADA compliant accessible routes. If you go over there and you walk around, you'll see where there's a difference in floor elevation, a step. I understand, in an older facility, it's not uncommon, and they've placed yellow tape there, kind of a visual indicator, to let people know so they don't trip. So we would suggest that we address some of those issues. And again, the non-ADA compliant door hardware, knob versus lever. EMA, the ramp, is technically not ADA compliant as far as the slope and the landing at the top.
Yeah, and the last one down there is replace the old furnaces. You currently have 4 brand new furnaces, 6 of them that are like 5 years old, and then there's 5 others that are older than 20 years, so just replacing those 5. And the loan priority 3 is basically due to life expectancy of the exhaust fans. They're at the end of the life expectancy. We're just going to get those replaced.
Priority 4, the lower of the priorities, repair damaged interior wall finishes. Just, again, few locations, very likely due to water infiltration that need repaired and painted. Repair and finish the hardwood floors. There's some locations up there where that needs to take place. Replace damaged, stained, missing acoustic panel panels. Just several of them are stained or they're beginning to bow pretty badly. Repair the tin ceiling, tiles, and paint. There's a few locations where I assume to be original tin ceiling could use some work. Due for roof replacement. Replace the EMA break room casework and finishes. Again, it's just, they're worn and outdated.
And then replace the basement sump pump. It's beyond life expectancy. And then the last few are electrical. If you, you look at the condensing units out on the back, there's a couple of them out there with safety switches that are basically starting to corrode. So just let's head that off before it basically deteriorates the switch. Provide occupancy sensor lighting controls. You do have LED lights, so let's add some additional energy savings in there for that. And then the last thing there is remove the abandoned weatherhead and exposed conductors that are basically on the outside of the building. And there is a picture of that in the report if you want to see it.
And the anticipated construction costs for each of the priorities. Priority 1, just over $2 million to 2.2. Priority 2, $235,000 to $258,000. Priority 3, $10,000 to $11,000. Priority 4, $761,000 to $848,000. And you can see the combined total there of all priorities is just over $3 million to 3.3. So then we did a construction cost summary of all priorities for all 3 buildings. You can see priority 1's 4.84 to 5.3. Priority 2 is 1.5 million to 1.6, almost 1.7 million. Priority 3, just over $1 million to 1.1, almost 1.2. Priority 4, 2.5 to 2.8. And then you can see the priority if you were to address absolutely everything, almost $10 million to $11 million to address everything of all 3 buildings.
Not bad if you say it fast.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. I think there's several things that are loud and clear from these reports. Besides having to fix all of these buildings, I think that one thing that has been made painfully obvious is while our maintenance staff works hard and does an outstanding job, we don't have enough. Because they can't, there is just too much to keep up with everything. And I think that all of the repairs and all of the things that need to be taking place, I mean, that's also painfully obvious. But it's, some of these priority fours, and maybe even a few of the priority threes, but you know, those, and Greg, you can speak to that if you want to, but it is painfully obvious that two people can't take care of, and you guys do an outstanding job, so please, you are appreciated, you guys work hard, but there are only so many hours in the day, and there's only so many. Right, right. At this point, but had we been able to, over the last 20 years, had a larger maintenance staff, some of this stuff, I'm not saying that it wouldn't, but maybe could be kept up with. Steve, comments, thoughts?
You don't want mine.
Okay.
The majority of this has just been years of neglect.
Well, yes.
It's just been, we keep kicking a can down the road.
You are
And
correct.
The sad thing is, no matter how this plays out, social media or whatever, it's hit our lap. The can can't be kicked anymore. And it's going to come down to what are we going to do about it? And there's a ton of money here that we don't have that we're going to have to figure out how to get this done. And to me, and they've said it repeatedly, and it says right here, this is based on spring of 2023 bidding. So these figures won't mean squat 5 years from now.
Correct.
They're going to be probably double or triple that. So we have the hard decision to make of where do we come up with this money to do it all and do it now?
You are right.
How do we do it? Because if we don't get it done, it's just going to get worse. These costs are just going to continue to grow.
And if we just do the priority ones, then
We're just
in
kicking
2
the
years,
can.
the priority twos become a priority one, and the priority threes become a priority two, and then you're just in the same boat. And I agree, it has been years of, it's been years in the making, and it just so happens that everything is coming to a head.
The can's been kicked up
Yeah.
against the curb and we have no place else to kick it.
Correct. I am in complete agreement with you. That doesn't happen often.
No,
So mark
it
this
doesn't.
down.
Yeah. I'm gonna write that down.
With the cost being so high to do everything, how practical, as we were going through all this, it seemed to me that if we were to hire a couple, 2, 3 additional maintenance people who had certain skills, there's a whole lot of this work that could be done if you had the right people with the right skills working full-time for the county. Now, obviously, something like replacing windows, and probably the roof jobs, we wouldn't want to have full-time roofers or whatnot, but is that a viable thing to look at, adding maintenance staff to take care? Certainly things like some of the masonry repair, if you had people with the right skills, all the sealants, sealing everything, the caulking, the exterior, a lot of the, if you had a person who did masonry and, or two even, it would seem we could keep them busy for several years here, and probably it would be within the same cost, you know, $10, $12 million. We could keep 2 or 3 guys busy, and they could do maybe half of this work. Is that practical, or would you recommend? And the other problem I think we have is Okay, we see all these pictures, we see all these things that are wrong. We have to go out and get bids on this from various companies. We don't necessarily have the expertise to pick the right companies to get the bids. Do you guys know of companies that do the various types of work that you could recommend that we would get bids from?
So, Ed, are you talking about like a professional design firm to put together the bid package to put it out to bid? Is that what you're referring to?
No. I mean, that might be necessary because we don't have that expertise. But that's just another cost added on to the top of everything else, you know. I'm talking about, we take our priority ones here. Let's say we're going after those. Obviously, we got to go after those first. We would probably have to get bids from half a dozen different companies at least to do all this type of work. And we just pull those out. If you don't have experience and you don't know necessarily, without, like you're saying, having a design firm to do it for you, if you want to replace the windows, say, in the Masonic building, there's 20 different window companies, and you can get 5, 6 different bids, but are you getting apples to apples?
Yeah.
You get a bid for $75,000 to replace 5 windows, and you get another bid for $150,000. That's double. But what are you getting for those things? And who has the expertise to say, well, you don't need the $150,000, but the $75,000 is not adequate. It's not a good repair. What you need to spend is about $100,000 and get a decent window that'll last 25 years or 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean, the windows on my house are 27 years old. They're still good.
Right. Yeah, and Ed, to address your specific example regarding windows, you're absolutely right. If you just call 2 or 3, different contractors and say, hey, give me a price to replace these windows, you'll get prices all over the place because they're, providing different quality of windows. My recommendation, and again, I'm only using this window replacement as an example, that you would need to put together some type of documents, bid documents that everybody's bidding the same quality, the same quantity. The other thing I will point out, and again, only talking about the window restorations, because this building, the courthouse, is on the National Registry of Historic Places. The old office building is in a registered historic district. There are guidelines regarding the Secretary of Interior standards that have to be followed. Also, if there's a local historic organization, it needs to be presented to them. Now, I've been involved in some courthouse window replacement projects in the past where we're actually doing a lot of research and finding what the original windows look like, whether they're the 6/6 double pane, single or double hung versus single hung, and that dictated what we had to go back and replace the windows with. And again, it's because of the National Registry of Historic Places.
So moving forward, we would potentially hire a firm to do all of this for us, to put that all together, to send out, to help us put together a bid packet, to put together what's required, and then to review and make suggestions onto what is
Yes.
accurate.
Now, the other thing I would say is if the county, and I'm just picking a number, if the county says, hey, we have $2 million, we're going to throw at this, this, and this as far as the priority ones, there's economies of scale.
Right.
If you break it up into 3 or 4 different little bid packages, windows, masonry restoration, roof, there could be economies of scale of combining it into one bid package and getting a better number.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Right, correct.
Yeah.
Instead of sending out 6 different bid packets, you send out 1 or 2 that have these similarities that companies do.
Correct.
And these similarities where they all may not do the same thing, but they may do 2 or 3.
Right.
And you can get a better price, absolutely.
Now, we also frequently, when we address these types of projects, on the bid form, we can ask for a contractor for a combined bid. In other words, if he wants to have the subcontractors under him that does masonry restoration or that does the roof, give us a price to do all of those as a single unified bid. Then on the bid form, we can also request individual bids for each one of those items. Because it may, on bid day, when you look at the actual submitted bids, it may be cheaper for the county to say, no, we're not going to go with a combined bid. We're going to go with, option A, option B.
Cafeteria plan versus.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's something that we could structure the bid on bid day so that we could analyze that and see what's the most cost effective.
Yes, Susan. I don't know if that's muted or not. Is it red or green? Press the top button right there on the.
Okay,
There
I
you
know
go.
this is you guys' work session, but I just had a few thoughts. It just struck me that the Justice Center, we're still paying off the original bond, right? And now there's stuff in red on it. And so while we're planning this, these are just random thoughts. One is we could do all the priority 1 and 2 items and no one would be able to tell any difference because that's not any of the interior work. So that's just one thought that I know we're all thinking. And the other is if we bond, say a 5-year bond, we want to make sure that nothing else is going into the red. I know you guys are already thinking these things too before that bond's paid off and we rebond again. So I didn't know how, if you guys are going to decide what you want done and then just put a request for funding to the council, or if you want to schedule a work session.
We'll
for
probably
all
end up
of us.
scheduling a work session to discuss.
Okay.
We're waiting on the lottery.
Well, I think
Don't wait
what
for
I
the
would,
lottery.
what I probably would like to do before, and you guys can, this is my personal opinion, I think that we need to digest all of this, and we need to come back to have a discussion with the 3 of us before we,
Yeah, you guys have to decide what you want done.
right,
What
before
you think is
we
practical.
bring everybody into the, for us to have to digest everything, us to have a discussion in another work session.
And as far as financing it, I also would like to see, do we have, as far as government entity, how much grant options do we have
Well,
to
and I
help
think that's
offset
where,
some of this?
Indiana Landmarks, they are, or, I mean, we are getting ready to hire a grant writer, but, with it being historic, surely to goodness that there is monies out there.
And that's what I'm hoping that will help maybe
Yeah.
offset some of these costs.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at the bottom line,
We-
the 1 to 4 thing is where I'm at.
Yeah,
is-
we need to, my personal opinion, and there is no decisions being made today, we're just discussing. It makes no sense to just do 1 or 2 things, because again, you're kicking the can down the road.
And then we're just as
and-
guilty as the people.
And then
prior to
yeah,
us.
and then 20 years from now, whoever's sitting in these seats are going to be, as we described it the other day, on the Titanic with a Dixie cup.
Dixie cup
Or the
or a
Which-
slotted spoon.
Which I actually said it's more like being on the Titanic with a toddler spoon that's slotted, because I mean, you can do $100,000 worth of something, but that's not going to make a dent in anything, and nobody will notice it. Just like the HVAC that we spent,
Yeah, $176 plus. Yeah.
There's $200,000, but
And
it's
you're
not
still
visible.
telling us we need to do more, so.
Yeah, so.
And the building around the HVAC system will fall down if we keep
Correct.
pushing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
we'll wait to hear from you guys, and then I know by our next meeting, we have to vote on a bond amount.
Yeah.
And we probably want a complete plan.
I can give you an
And-
idea of what we're wanting.
Well, well, my guess is,
No, I'll say, because if you want a bond amount that we're looking for, go to the 1 to 4 on the bottom of that page and the top end of that and add a little. That's where we'd like to be.
Well, that's
And
where.
I guess my guess is, and I don't know because we haven't discussed any of this, my guess is we're not going to be able to bond for 11 million because we're also going to have to expand the jail at some point, and we're also going to have to,
Right, we need the other pod. And
You know-
the 4-H, the fairgrounds are falling down.
yeah, I mean,
And
they're.
we have all these other things, right?
Right,
So,
right. So,
okay.
but.
We have a
we'll-
maintenance building that's in shambles that we need to rebuild.
Yeah.
So, there are, that pile keeps growing. And so,
And I know one of my goals is to not kick things down the road.
Right. Or if we are waiting, it should be on a set plan. These are the
Yep.
things we're doing now, and in 3 years,
in
these are
3
the
years,
next
these
set
are
of
the
things
thi-
we're going to
correct.
do.
Yeah,
And
have
we
a
have to have
long-term
funding lined
plan.
up for them too.
Long-term plan to say, okay, we can do this now, but in 3 years, we're going to do this, and have it all planned out that within 5 years, it's all done, or whatever. Yeah, no problem. We'll get it going.
we're working on that.
Okay. Lisa, do you have anything? Are you sure? Greg, would you like to comment, or?
I just say it's a very comprehensive plan. I don't think there's anything that's been left out or overlooked. We went over everything that the fine tooth comb, and then we've got to fix it hard out of that.
So, could you come up here, Greg, to the microphone?
Because I still see, no matter how much you guys and these guys have went through this, when you get started doing these
You're
things,
gonna find
there's
more
going to be
things.
unknowns.
Yeah, there is gonna
And
be
these amounts will go up.
Yes, they will.
And this is what, the other part that worries me, that the longer we put this off, the more that grows. And it's just going to, like I said, 20 years from now, nobody's going to remember what charitable things we did, but they'll remember when the courthouse clock fell off. And that'll be the thing we'll be remembered for and why we didn't address it. So to me, these things, because these are the buildings that we have been entrusted with and put in charge of, that's why we're here. And we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect these facilities and to fix them. So that's where I'm at, is trying to figure out how we do all this and get it done. I appreciate the effort and the work that you guys have put into this.
Absolutely. So, Greg, are there some of the things in the priority 4s that if we had additional maintenance staff that could be done in-house?
Yeah,
If we had more staff?
absolutely.
Okay.
You realize he's going to ask us to buy a man lift too out of that.
Sure.
Now, yeah, you guys really didn't address that. Not just priority 4s. If you had a few additional maintenance staff with the right skills, is that practical at all?
I think
Here's my
it's going
thing
to
is
be
if you do a
difficult to
lot of
find.
if you do a lot of the 4s and you don't do the 1s, the 4s are falling into because the 1s aren't fixed. That's why you have the 4s and the 4s will get worse. So if we start Band-Aiding 4s and we don't fix
Oh,
1s,
no, I'm not.
that's what worries me
No,
is we need to
that's-
make sure
I'm not
the
talking
minor
about-
things are
that's not
great.
what we're- that's
I
not
know.
what we're talking
The minor
about.
things we can fix, and I think these guys, if
Yes,
they have
but
the skill
it's part
set,
of the
can do
overall
so.
plan, that some of these things, if they had additional maintenance, they could do some of the priority 4s and the other things that are coming up to keep them from coming to a
Yes.
priority 4, if they had additional
I was going to
staff.
say if they're
But I
qualified to
don't,
do it.
I
they
don't
could-
know that we would be able to hire people that have the masonry skills, have these things to do priority 3s or priority 2s.
Yeah, I
My
don't see
personal
that work.
opinion.
I don't see that being a practical fix. From our experience, you really need to get a professional crew that has a lot of experience under their belt. For instance, tuck pointing. I realize tuck pointing seems to most people to be just, placing mortar back into a brick joint, but there's a lot more to it than that.
Yes,
And
there's more
understanding
skill.
what's causing the problem and how to fix that problem. Otherwise, you're just patching over that.
And it's
then
gonna happen
you
again.
didn't fix your problem kind of things.
Right,
But,
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
But some of these companies that do historical restoration, like that just redone this building across the street the last couple of years, well, they just have 20 years of experience of that, and they know exactly what to do to get it done in a timely manner. If you have building maintenance personnel up there, you're doing a couple different things. One, you're putting your people in danger for high lift work and all that kind of stuff that don't have experience at it. And then the other thing is when we have an issue and we get called off of a job and we need an extra hand, then your project stops. And then if it rains in between, your project stops. And then, the way our schedules are right now, we have long weekends and stuff, so it's hard to stay on a project to get it completed in a timely manner with the needed manpower.
Right.
The one thing I would add to that, and you just said it, and that is the priority one items are priority one for a reason. Because time is of the essence.
Right,
Yes.
exactly.
And what I would be fearful of is county maintenance staff, it may take them, honestly, 2 to 3 years
To do all
some
the
of this
priority
work,
work, exactly.
Yes.
while your conditions just continue to deteriorate,
Exactly.
deteriorate, as opposed to hiring somebody that's qualified that does this work full-time, a company.
And the whole time, our cost for materials and the labor and everything is just increasing really fast.
Exactly, exactly. And I guess my thought is increasing maintenance staff is to, going forward, as well as to be able to keep up on the small things so they don't turn into a priority 4, priority 3, priority 2, priority
And
1.
everybody's bids are only good for about 30 days the way prices are increasing. So to keep the ball rolling and keep everything
Yeah. Oh,
rolling
yeah.
together is really difficult, and it needs a lot of management.
Yeah, I believe that professional crews, bids, companies are required for the majority of these repairs. My personal opinion. Would it be great if we had a big enough maintenance staff to do all these
Oh,
things?
absolutely, yeah.
But, we're not Hendricks County
Yeah.
or Hamilton County or, some of the other counties that have a lot
To
more
be
funds
honest, most maintenance personnel, most maintenance workers, I've been in maintenance ever since I was in high school with all different sizes of apartment complexes and real estate people that have rentals and everything, and it's just maintenance personnel is generally like a jack of all trades, or they have, a wide range of experience where we need to hire specialty people to
Right.
do a special situation.
I agree. Anything else, Ed?
And I think I'm going to withdraw the idea of hiring additional maintenance staff for that purpose. I was just thinking that if you had the right skills, you could do not just priority 4 stuff, you could do priority 1 stuff. But it's probably not the most practical way to get it done.
We do need to look at the possibilities of hiring maintenance staff with my age and Ken's age. We're both looking, we're looking at our retirement, and so
In the next 20 years, right?
25.
and we would
Yeah,
we
2 to
don't
5.
want to
You said 2 to
leave
5,
you
yeah,
guys
2 to 5,
hanging. We want someone
25.
that's going to be able to pick up where we left off, and,
Exactly.
because if you don't have someone here every day that can do the job, you'll
I mean, this is
really quick.
non-related, but to address what he's saying, we actually do need to do that because once they're gone,
Their knowledge is gone.
the knowledge goes.
Yeah.
And if we don't have people that they are training and showing the things that, there's little tricks to doing certain stuff that we've gotten by with. If these younger, hopefully people that come in that are able to do this and continue it, if they don't know what they're doing, because you can put a book in front of somebody and it may say you do X, Y, and Z, but there's probably A and B that could have been done that you didn't have to do, that they know because they've done it.
We watch a lot of, in the office workers here, we watch a lot of the institutional knowledge just retire and leave before they train in the new person, and you do not want to do that on your maintenance staff.
Nope, we do not.
Okay. So, any other questions, comments before we?
Yeah, just on the all the all the ADA stuff. Do you guys know what is required by law and what is not required? I know, because there's a whole lot of ADA stuff in there.
Any
And-
company that would be brought in would know in all those requirements.
Well,
to
for
put-
example, the height of railings, like right out there. We've got those low railings. They're too low. I'm careful when I walk around there because I don't want to fall down into that pit. However, to replace that because it's too low, well, in 100 years, I don't know if anybody's ever fallen over that railing. But things like that, are we required to do that?
And there's your historic thing that comes in because those are original to the building.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm sorry, I'm going to be very reluctant to change those.
Oh,
Me too. Or add 2 feet to them so they're safer.
Yeah.
You know, that would look really stupid. So, where we have all these ADA
Yeah,
things.
whatever company would be brought in to do any of the bid work or any of the requirements would have that knowledge.
Several years ago, we had an ADA specialist come here from the state several years ago, and I went around to all of our facilities with him, and they did a report on all of the county property.
Oh, do you have that?
No, that was presented to the commissioners probably 5 years ago or so. I went to every facility with this guy, and we talked about.
So we should have it somewhere in the
There
record.
should be a report. It would.
In a
It
commissioner's
would need to be
meeting.
updated and made current, but that would probably need to be done again before you even try to hire anyone to do a scope of work, because that would be what you want to go off of. But we have done an ADA report before.
And Ed, you're right, there is a lot of ADA things that are noted in here. A lot of them are easy pickings. A lot of the stuff is easy pickings.
Well, I'm all for it, you know, being ADA compliant, especially if it's a real hazard. But I'm not for, I mean, you could spend, obviously, I'm sure just the ADA stuff is millions of dollars here. And,
Well, the thing is with the ADA here, because this is a
Well, I agree
historic
with you.
building, we're not, there, I'm going to say we're not required to, there is some.
There are provisions.
There you go, that's the
Yes.
word I'm looking for. Provisions because of this being a historic building.
If it's gonna-
you're probably right, any company we hired would know what is essential and what's not essential, or at least would discuss that with us.
Or what provisions would have to be made, or
Yes.
what reports would have to be given to substantiate why it's not in ADA compliance.
And yes, and you can also make the case to the Historic Preservation Board, you know, of why you don't want to implement something, and it's because it's going to alter the historic integrity
Right.
of X.
Anything else, Ed?
The only other thing, I know you went to expense to print all those books, and I'm not sure, but how difficult would be to give us, not a lot, not 100, maybe 3 or 4, what page is this? Page 6, for example.
This is just an example, that's not the actual numbers, correct? On the smaller ones are just examples?
Yes.
This is just an example, not the actual one. The ones that are on the full pages are the actual.
Right, I could see.
And we've got 12 of the full reports over here and 7 of the presentations over here.
Okay, now I can see.
Yeah, the ones that are small within the slides are just examples of what the grid looks like. That's all. Yeah. It's not the actual data. It looks, yeah. Those are the ones that are actual.
I'm good.
Okay. Steve, do you have anything else? Any further comments? Greg, anything else? Lori, anything you want to add? And I know neither one of you have your calendars with you, so we'll set here quickly before the next council meeting for us to have a more in-depth discussion of the information that is presented, and then we can have a meeting with the council to kind of discuss that as well. And we'll do that within the next, hopefully we can figure that out today when that can be, and then we'll go from there.
I've got my calendar.
Yeah.
Steve probably doesn't have his.
No, I do not.
And you probably don't have it on your phone like Bob
No, I
does.
do not.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I am not that tech savvy.
yeah, I have mine on my phone.
yeah, we got a problem with you, Steve.
Yeah,
know.
So, all right, if there is no further comment or questions, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.